Alright babe, grab a drink, get comfy, because today we are going to gently ruin some of Disney's live-action fairy tales together. Not in a burn it all down way, but in a oh that's what you didn't tell us way. So you know how Disney keeps remaking their animated classics into live action? Cinderella, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Little Mermaid, Snow White, all of them getting the glossy reboot treatment. The thing is, a lot of these stories are based on source material that is way darker, messier, and more twisted than anything you see on screen. And what Disney does in live action is very interesting because they are not just softening the old tales. Sometimes they are quietly reacting to them. Sometimes they are correcting themselves, and sometimes they are just pretending entire nightmare chapters never existed. Let's start with Cinderella because she looks harmless, right? Pretty dress, glass shoes, lost sandal, midnight drama. In the 2015 live-action movie, they really lean hard into this message. Have courage and be kind. Ella is kind even when everyone around her is awful. We get the backstory of a loving mother, a father who genuinely cares, then grief, and slowly the stepmother's jealousy and bitterness. It's all very emotional, very human, very trauma, but with good lighting. Now compare that to the Grimm Brothers version from the 1800s. In that one, the stepsisters are not just mean girls with sharp cheekbones. They are physically mutilating themselves to try to force the fairy tale to fit. When the prince comes with the golden or glass shoe and tries it on the first sister, the stepmother literally tells her to cut off her toes so her foot will fit in the shoe. She does it. The prince rides away with her, thinking he's found his bride, until birds in a tree call out that there's blood in the shoe. He turns back, realizes she's bleeding, and they try again with the second sister. This time the stepmother tells her to cut off part of her heel. Same thing. The shoe fits, the prince rides away, the birds call him out again. At the wedding, those same birds peck out the stepsister's eyes as punishment. That's the original energy. Disney's live action completely knows this, and instead of leaning into body horror and punishment, it swings the other way. The stepsisters are pathetic and insecure more than evil masterminds. The focus is on the psychology of the stepmother, who is jealous because life didn't give her the fairy tale she expected. Cinderella forgives her and walks away. No mutilation, no eye-gouging birds, no one losing toes to get a husband. It's still a story about envy and status and beauty, but the live action says we are not doing torture, we are doing generational hurt and survival. That's a very big tonal shift from the source material. Now let's jump over to Sleeping Beauty, because Maleficent is where things get really interesting. The original animated Sleeping Beauty already softened the older tales, but the deeper you go, the worse it gets. The most disturbing early version comes from Italian writer Giambattista Basile in the 1630s in a story called Sun, Moon and Talia. In that version, Talia, the Sleeping Beauty figure, pricks her finger on a splinter of flax, not a spinning wheel, and falls into a deep sleep. She's left in her castle, basically in a coma. A king finds her, doesn't wake her up with a kiss, but assaults her while she is unconscious. She later wakes up after giving birth to twins, when one of the babies sucks the splinter out of her finger while nursing. What? The king is already married. His wife finds out, tries to kill Talia and the twins, and it all turns into a revenge bloodbath until she dies instead. There is no polite spinning wheel chorus, no romantic true love's kiss. It's assault, adultery, attempted cannibalism, and they lived happily ever after. So what does Disney do in Maleficent, especially in 2014 live action? They basically flip the whole story. Instead of the threat being some random ancient curse plus a handsome prince, the real emotional core is betrayal and bodily autonomy. Maleficent starts as a powerful fairy with wings, trusting a human boy. As they grow up, he drugs her and cuts off her wings to gain power at court. When she wakes up wingless and screaming, that scene is widely read as an assault metaphor. The true love's kiss that wakes Aurora isn't a romantic prince at all. It's Maleficent's kiss on her forehead after she regrets cursing her and grows to love her. So the live-action film takes a story with roots in non-consensual violence and says, we are not romanticizing that. We are going to center a woman who was violated. We are going to make the villain a victim. And we are going to let female love be the thing that heals. That twist doesn't come out of nowhere. It's very much in conversation with how dark the older versions were. Next up, Beauty and the Beast. The 2017 live action is almost shot for shot the animated version in a lot of places. But they added layers that answer some of the uncomfortable questions folklore nerds had for years. In the original literary version by French writer Jean-Marie Le Prince de Beaumont in the 18th century, Beauty agrees to live with the Beast to save her father and eventually falls in love with him because of his kindness, even though he looks monstrous. There's already a strong vibe of you should see past appearances, you should appreciate goodness even if it's hidden. But it also brushes shoulders with the old idea that women should endure and tame beastly men. Disney's animated film kept some of that. The Beast is angry, violent, throws tantrums. The live action tries really hard to sand down those edges. They give him reasons: trauma, isolation, cruel upbringing. They expand on Belle's agency. She invents, she reads, she challenges him. There's a moment where he shows her a book that lets them travel magically and shares his past, and there's much more emphasis on intellectual connection first. They also clarify ages and timelines a bit to make it weird less. In a lot of older retellings, Beauty is explicitly very young, and her attraction to this older cursed creature reads like a morality lesson about duty and obedience. The live action instead pushes the two lonely weirdos who find each other angle. At the same time, some feminist critics still point out that no matter how many songs you add, there is still a woman trapped in an enchanted castle with a man who lost his temper and imprisoned her father. The live action doesn't fix that structure, but you can feel the writers trying to refocus the story on mutual respect, consent, and choice, rather than just love your captor and he will change. Again, it's Disney quietly negotiating with its own past. Now, Little Mermaid. Everyone knows Ariel, but not everyone knows how brutally the original story by Hans Christian Andersen ends. In the 1837 tale, the mermaid saves a prince, falls in love, and makes a deal to trade her tongue for legs. Every step she takes on land feels like walking on ice. The prince marries someone else. The sea witch won't save her. Her sisters give her a knife and tell her that if she kills the prince and lets his blood fall on her feet, she will turn back into a mermaid. She can't do it. She throws the knife into the sea, jumps after it, and dissolves into sea foam. Only later, Andersen take on a she becomes a spirit sort of ending. Disney looked at that and said, okay, but what if we didn't traumatize children forever? The original animated film already gave Ariel a happy ending. The prince chooses her. The sea witch dies. The father learns to let go. The 2023 live action keeps that overall shape but updates the power dynamics. Ariel doesn't just lose her voice, she loses her memories of the deal in some scenes, which makes the whole true love kiss race more intense. Eric is also given more personality and agency. He's curious about the sea, feels trapped in his role, and bonds with Ariel over shared curiosity rather than just looks. The movie also quietly reworks some of the lyrics from Kiss the Girl to make it less about pushing a silent girl into a kiss and more about reading neutral signals. That's not random. That's a modern studio going, we know this story has roots in self-sacrifice, pain, and voicelessness, so in live action we are going to emphasize Ariel's choices and give her more of a say. Even the ending, where she and Eric sail out as equal partners with her father's blessing, has a different energy than Andersen's tragic form. Finally, Snow White. We actually do have the new live action on the table, so we can compare all three layers: the original Grimm Nightmare, the 1937 classic, and the 2025 remake. In the Grimm version, Snow White's stepmother orders a huntsman to kill her and bring back her lungs and liver as proof. He kills a wild animal instead, and the queen literally eats the organs, believing they are Snow White's. Later, after the poisoned apple, Snow White ends up in a glass coffin, and in some early tellings, a passing prince wants to take this beautiful dead girl home just to look at her. The chunk of apple gets dislodged when his servants stumble. She wakes up, and at the wedding, the stepmother is forced to dance in red-hot iron shoes until she dies. So yeah, the original is not exactly a gentle woodland picnic. Disney's 1937 film already toned this down and wrapped it in a singing animals, comic relief dwarfs, and a much softer ending. No organ eating, no torch for shoes. The prince actually knows she is alive at the end, and the queen just falls off a cliff like a proper Hollywood villain. In 2025, live action goes even further and basically reprograms Snow White from passive pretty girl to future ruler of the kingdom mode. Instead of being defined by her skin color and housekeeping, this Snow White is written as a brave and pathetic leader in training. The movie gives her a real backstory with loving parents who rule justly before the evil queen manipulates her way into power. And Snow White's goal is not just to survive, but to take the kingdom back. A bunch of old violent beads are softened or swapped. The huntsman still refuses to kill her, but he is not bringing back an animal heart this time. In some versions of the remake coverage, he brings back an apple instead, a symbolic proof that lets the story move forward without the "here are her organs in a box" moment. The romantic lead is no longer a random prince who falls for a girl in a coma, but Jonathan, a morally messy bandit who has his own arc and gradually decides to stand up for something bigger than himself. Snow White forms deeper, more equal relationship with the dwarfs, and in the finale she is the one who confronts the queen at the castle, turns the guards to her side, and refuses to kill even the woman who tried to destroy her. The queen still dies, but not because Snow White tortures her. She basically destroys herself by smashing her magic mirror, which takes her down with it. Snow White ends the story as the new queen, rebuilding the kingdom and ruling with kindness and justice. It is a very deliberate update from sweet girl who gets rescued to young woman who survives, learns, and then leads. So when we say twisted facts Disney hides, it is not that they are secretly lying about dates or credits. It is that they are standing on top of centuries of dark, complicated stories about violence, gender, power, and fear, and they are choosing which parts to keep and which parts to bury. Cinderella's sisters really did slice up their feet in the grim text. Early Sleeping Beauty really was assaulted while unconscious in Basile's version. The Little Mermaid really did live in constant pain and chose death rather than killing the man she loved. Snow White's stepmother really did eat what she thought were her organs and then danced herself to death in burning shoes. Beauty and the Beast really did grow out of a tradition that told young women to endure beastly husbands because goodness might be hidden inside. Disney's live-action era is like one long glossy argument with all of that. Sometimes they are trying to clean up their own earlier animated versions, and sometimes they are trying to fix the message for a new generation. Sometimes they are just carefully tiptoeing around the darkest roots of the tree and hoping you do not go reading old fairy tale translations at 2 a.m. But once you know those roots are there, this is very hard to unsee them. When you watch Cinderella forgive her stepmother, you can feel the ghost of those birds waiting to pick out eyes. When Maleficent kisses Aurora awake, you can feel Basile's sleeping girl who never consented to anything. When Belle waltzes with the Beast, there is still a faint echo of all the wives who were told to be patient with violent men. When Ariel sings about having a voice, you can feel Andersen's mermaid dissolving into sea foam. And when Snow White stands up as a leader in live action and takes her kingdom back, you can feel how far she has traveled from the girl whose lungs and liver were almost a side dish. Disney is never going to film those originals word for word. And honestly, for kids, thank God. But knowing what is hiding under the glitter makes the live action choices way more interesting. They are not just doing remakes for nostalgia and money, they are quietly arguing with history and with themselves. Alright, if your childhood feels a tiny bit attacked, but also way more interesting now, tell me which fairy tale we should crack open next. We can do Rapunzel, we can do Hansel and Gretel, we can go all in on the absolute unhinged original Little Mermaid. Until then, stay curious, trust your instincts, and remember that behind every soft Disney glow, there is usually a grim little shadow holding the first draft.